Welcome, Accounting Alchemy Network. I am so excited that we are diving into this social forum lyceum on February 19th, 2024 to discuss living in the uncomfortable and what that looks like and stepping into some of those ideas. And I'm excited to have each of you here, and particularly Seth Fineberg, so that we can discuss the article that you recently wrote on this topic. And our intention today is to create a collaborative article from the members present around strategies to living in the uncomfortable. Now, before we dive into that topic, let's just take a moment to arrive and ground. If we want to close our eyes or lower our gaze, whatever feels good to each of us in this moment, and take a few nice deep breaths in through the nose. Just releasing anything that came before this meeting or anything that's coming later, down, down, down our bodies and into the ground. And on this next breath, sending extra love and attention to any area of the body that needs it. And releasing any stress or tension, letting it just fall away into the earth. And on this next breath, feeling gratitude for the air we get to breathe, for the spark of life that is the fire within us, for the waters in and all around us, and for this beautiful earth holding us to her with her gravity, like a perpetual hug. And just continuing to breathe deeply at whatever cadence feels good to each of us. Allowing ourselves to arrive fully in this place and time with each other. Releasing any thoughts of multitasking or all of the things that we have to do. And just checking in with ourselves around this topic of living in the uncomfortable. And feeling into what that means for us and our bodies in this present moment. Are there any thoughts or feelings that are making us uncomfortable? Maybe leaning into the distinction between discomfort and harm, recognizing that those are not the same thing. And just allowing ourselves to be fully present for the conversation that we're going to have with gratitude, curiosity, and excitement for the opportunity to create positive change in our world. And when we're ready, go ahead and take another deep breath and move our bodies in whatever way feels good to us in this moment. Coming back together with our eyes. And I would love if we can do a really brief introduction and check-in, maybe just name, pronouns, where you are calling in from today, and how you are feeling. So whatever's showing up for you emotionally, briefly. So I'll start as an example. Hi, everyone. I'm Ingrid Edstrom, one of the co-founders of Accounting Alchemy Network, and I use she, her pronouns. I am calling in from the unceded ancestral lands of the Shasta and Takelma peoples in Southern Oregon, and I am feeling very excited to have this conversation with each of you. And I'm going to go ahead and popcorn it over to Jana.
I knew it was coming to me. I am Jana Etienne. My pronouns are she, her. I am joining from Silver Spring, Maryland, just north of Washington, D.C. And I am feeling distracted today. Oh, wait. Okay. Who's next? Jared.
Hey everyone, I'm Jared. I use he, him pronouns. I'm calling in from Denver, Colorado, which I think had the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho tribes. And I'm feeling overwhelmed. I've got a lot going on, but excited that this fell on a day that I have a day off and get to participate.
Thank you.
And I'll pass it over to Alina.
Hey, I'm Alina. I live in Amboy, Washington, the unceded lands of the Klickitat, Cowlitz, and Lower Chinook people. She, her pronouns, and I'm feeling curious about this conversation's about to happen. Allison.
Oh, before she goes, can you repeat the names of the peoples? I didn't understand them.
Oh yeah, sorry. Klickitat, Cowlitz, and Lower Chinook.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Allison Morris, and I use they, them pronouns, and I am on weirdly the ceded lands of the Anishinaabe people. However, I will acknowledge that saying ceded doesn't mean a whole lot when you have massive power disparities. That is southeastern Michigan, and I feel in the same way that a lot of people do, basically in a Monday way. I'm glad that I have some expansive time, but it's the beginning of the week. And I think Seth is last.
Thank you. Seth Fineberg, he, him, dialing in from the great city of New York on this very, very sunny late February day. I have been really looking forward to this chat as it moves forward a discussion that I feel that the Counting Alchemy Network has been passionate about and in its efforts, and that I think the profession needs to hear, for lack of a better term. So looking forward to our discussion today.
Thank you, Seth. And I'll be tossing it back your way in just a moment. I guess I would love to just really briefly start with the end in mind to a certain extent, the end in this case being the end of the article that you recently published. You said, and never forget you are not alone. If I've learned one thing in my years overseeing this profession, it is that a true community, it is that it is a true community. Find your people when things feel awkward. They will be there for you because at the very least, they've probably been there or are there too. And I feel like that is what we are doing here today, is finding our people, coming together, and really just delving into this discussion, recognizing that all of these uncomfortable opportunities are things that we don't have to do alone, that we can toss each other lifelines and strategies and all kinds of things. So with that, I would love, Seth, for you to share kind of your inspiration idea, because you started this you started this thing. So yeah, let us know what you're envisioning.
All right. There it is. Yeah. So as Ingrid said, I kind of just took the initiative to write up initially just some of the notes that I was taking over, a couple of meetings that we had talking about this idea of not being uncomfortable, but living in the uncomfortable, that state of mind of where things don't, if you started a company before, if you're doing anything different in your life that you just haven't tried before, really don't know a whole lot about, it's that weird gut feeling that you get. It's not that it's not right, it's just that it just doesn't feel, well, comfortable. Kind of like you're trying on a new pair of pants for the first time, or you're with maybe a group that you know you would like to mingle with, but you don't know how to start that conversation. Whatever it is, this profession as a whole, as I've witnessed over 22 plus years now, it clearly, we've heard the idea and the word change being bandied about for years. And a lot of times it has someone else's agenda attached to it, and it hasn't been very, organic or natural or collective push towards the next phase. And so I called out 3 core things that we all discussed and that I agree are at the core of what is going to move this profession forward and really be a more welcoming place for students, for anyone thinking about a career in accounting to come into. And that's to be more inclusive, to really truly commit to a life work balance, which is what I'm calling it, and I really want that to be more viral than it is, because that's what it is. Because work life puts work first. That has to stop. And thirdly, fair and equitable, compensation based on the professional time, the fact that you are a professional, you've put, time into your education, into the skills that you've learned, and you want to come in to a space and not feel that you have to just kind of for lack of a better term, just eat dirt for a while until you actually, make it, or you get to some status where, okay, we can finally start paying you, your worth. All of these things have to be from the outset. When you come into a career in accounting or you move forward in accounting, all of these things will be more present. And in order to get there, uncomfortable things need to happen. Discussions, activities, managing partners, owners of firms need to commit to these things first and foremost, to manage some of the expectations of reflecting, I guess, the world around us and the business environment around us, and just being more of just a all over better place to work. Because in my view, accountants really are at the core of so much. And one of the things that attracted me to the Accounting Alchemy Network was, Ingrid and Jana really saying, this, it can be so much more than it is. The idea of being an accounting professional needs to change from what it was. And, arguably, business in general, for sure. But the world that we know, the world of accounting, and being a true small business leader, because make no mistake, accountants are really helping shepherd the current and next generation of young businesses, growing businesses, which is the lifeblood of our economy, and why people want to get up in the morning and achieve their dreams, their goals. I mean, sure, there's a financial tie to things. We know the world that we live in. It's not all for free. We donate our time here, and that's wonderful. But ultimately, the accounting professional is the one that supports those dreams. And you, as an accounting professional too, like, you, especially if you're an owner of a firm, or even people who work there, they want to feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And so it's for these reasons that I feel that living in the uncomfortable needs to happen. Sorry, I tend to get very, very verbose when I'm have a topic that I'm particularly passionate about. So
I love
I'm
it,
excited.
Seth.
I'm
sure you're
excited
not the
to.
only one.
Thank you.
So
But yeah, so yeah, even being in this role of just going, yeah, it's my voice out there, kind of just playing this part in there is somewhat of an uncomfortable thing. I've never really been comfortable with, a spotlight of any kind. I just kind of like to be a part of what's going on. But I recognize, and all of us need to recognize that, our voice matters. Our voices count in everything that we say and do, and we have impact,
oh
either,
yeah,
in a small group or in a larger, setting.
getting over that
But
imposter syndrome is huge.
oh, every day, there's always just those moments of it catches your breath sometimes of just like, what am I doing? But you just you push through that, and
So
you know
you asked some really good questions in the article itself to help prompt people to start thinking about this living in the uncomfortable. And I guess to reframe really briefly that idea of living in the uncomfortable and what it is we're looking for here. I feel like the Yes organization that puts on the Yes Jam events, not the same Yes as the magazine. I've been to a couple of their events. They talk about the idea of the zones, the center zone being our comfort zone. And then outside the comfort zone, we have our stretch zone. And stretch zone is where learning and growth happens. And then outside of the stretch zone is the panic zone. Panic zone is where learning and growth stops because we are flooded. We are in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and nothing else is coming through because we're in survival mode. So understanding that differentiation between comfort, stretch, and panic, what we're shooting for here is the stretch zone. So when we're talking about living in the uncomfortable, we're not trying to tell people that they need to be living in panic. So with that in mind, just looking at some of the questions that we're tossing out, Seth, you mentioned to take a look at the clients, staff, and systems that you have in place. Are they making you happy? Are you doing the kind of work that you want to do, making the money that you want or need, and still enough personal time? And I want to reframe those just a little bit because those are yes or no questions, and I want us to have a little bit more discussion. So the first kind of prompt question that I would love to toss out to the group are, where are some of the areas where you are inviting positive change in your life or work, that you are leaning into the uncomfortable, that you're leaning into your stretch zone? And I see, Jana, you have your hand up, and I don't know if you had your hand up prior to that question, or if you want to answer that, or if you have another idea.
It was prior to that, because one of the things I think we don't talk about is uncomfortable. Like, do we know what that even feels like in our bodies and in our minds? And I think we talk about being uncomfortable, and it's this intellectual idea. And all of us know it, from a tactile perspective, ow, that hurts. Okay, that's uncomfortable. But what do we mean from emotional, uncomfortable emotionally or psychologically? And we talk about psychological safety in organizations. Again, we're so academic and intelligent, and we live in this part of our brain as accountants in this profession where emotions, we leave them there because we come to work here and the emotions are over there. So I think one of the things I would invite all of us, and for everyone watching, to do is, when you think about and answer these questions, if you were to just sit still for a moment and think about the last time you believe you were uncomfortable. And then, what does it feel like in your body? And could you notice when that moment started? Oftentimes we realize it a bit after the fact. But do we notice when it started? Because if you notice when it started, you can start to become aware of what is activating the discomfort. And then we can do something about it. Now, so I love these questions, and I'll stop at that. I just want to say, as we think about the answers to these questions, most of the answers are going to come from the place where I'm realizing after the fact that I am now uncomfortable. And hopefully what we can do through work is get to the point where we can see the discomfort coming and we're prepared for that.
Love that. Thank you.
But no, I
Right.
don't have answer to the question. I apologize.
Yeah. I want to acknowledge Allison's got her hand up, and it looks like, Jared, you have something to say also. So we'll do Allison and then Jared.
Yeah. Well, I actually, a combination of an answer and a response to Jana. Um, I I think that we are trained very much to not recognize discomfort, or conversely, to recognize any discomfort as harm. So if you're going to recognize it, it has to be terrible. It has to be life-threatening. And that doesn't leave any space for nuance there. And it also doesn't leave space for growth edge, or for meeting people halfway, or even for talking with people who are different from you. And I think that this is something that we see in our work, where you can avoid discomfort by leaning on this sort of professional jargon. You can avoid discomfort by staying in an accounting space and not sort of stretching out toward the folks who you're working with who aren't in that accounting space. And I don't want to discourage the idea of an accounting community, because I think that's important in itself, but it shouldn't be the only thing. Like, we shouldn't be struggling, like, from oasis to oasis to talk to other accountants. We should be nourished by our interactions as we bridge those gaps. And I think that some of that positive change is translation. actively dismantling gatekeeping in a sort of, oh, well, instead of saying cash receipts, I'm going to say, that sort of instead of making myself more comfortable by moving you away from asking questions or overwhelming you, or even just saying what's off the top of my head because that's the language that I'm thinking in. I stopping and thinking, okay, well, what is my audience? And where are they coming from? And not only that, why are we in this space together? Because it could be any number of things. It might not even be related to the topic that we say that we're together for. So that's a lot of work, and it's a lot of resisting urgency, and it's also a lot of uh, the thinking about valuing professionalism and the time in and the work. It feels like it's pushing back against that, and I think that the place to grow is in not seeing it as a zero-sum game, not seeing it as winners and losers, but sort of seeing it as collaboration and community.
Thank you. And I want to apologize, Allison. I had a pronoun misstep earlier and want to acknowledge it. One of the things of leaning into the uncomfortable is having those conversations and owning them and normalizing them. So thank you. Jared, do you want to step in?
Yeah, sure. I was gonna kind of frame it in terms of how I am thinking about it. And I guess where I would go is discomfort for me has always been about change. And whether that fine edge between like, handling it or panicking from it has to do with my own personal level of preparedness for the situation. And so, if I feel unprepared and discomfortable, that usually leads to a panic state for me versus feeling prepared and discomfortable, really leads to growth and new adventures. And I actually, feel like I thrive in that environment. And I'm actually very much embracing that right now. My 9 to 5 job, I'm trying to, help influence my organization in terms of new opportunities and new paths. In my free time, I'm trying to, launch new initiatives and do new things, both that challenge me individually, but also, reach out to the community and try and get new things going off the ground. And then in my family life, I am about ready to, my wife and I are 8 months pregnant and about ready to have our first child here at the ripe old age of 42. So uh, change is coming all around me, but hopefully I've got the preparedness to tackle it all and not have it lead towards panic.
Wow, congratulations, Jared. It's a lot of big change. There's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on. Hence my overwhelmed comment at the beginning of this.
Can I jump in super quick, rather short thought? A quick thought. And that is, Jared, you have a beautiful opportunity because with children comes the seeing everything new. They talk about what is it, the child's mind? There's a saying
Beginner's
for that.
mindset, the
Beginner's
uncomfortable.
mindset. Yeah. And one of the things I loved about parenting is to live and to just celebrate what it is your kid is learning, what sand feels like and their curiosity. And it reminds all of us to stop and just appreciate things that we've long forgotten to appreciate. And it's very similar to, in some ways, to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, and I also want to acknowledge from some of the things that I've been learning over the last several years, is that the breakthrough generally comes after the breakdown. And so then I ask myself, why am I resisting the breakdown? Because the resistance is making it so much harder. where, it's like, why would we resist birth? It's not good for us. It's not good for the baby. Like, don't hold that in. Like, yes, it's going to hurt. And, there's something that comes out of it and there's new life created. So thinking about change almost as a birth or even rebirth cycle, recognizing that sometimes things have to pass away in order to be reborn, in order to have that energy be recycled into new energy. And also wanting to quote Reverend Deborah Johnson talks about how pain pushes until vision pulls. And just thinking about where we are in our discomfort state. If we think about Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, how he talks about the last human freedom, the one thing that no one can ever take from us is our ability to choose our attitude in any situation. We may not be able to choose our circumstances or even our emotions, which are largely automatic chemical responses in our bodies, but we can always choose to either have a positive attitude that is helping us with the situation or a negative attitude that is not serving us or anyone else. And I feel like that idea of pain pushes until vision pulls is a tipping point, an inflection point between when we move from the resistance of the uncomfortable to noticing, oh, wait, there's change happening, which means there could be an opportunity here. What's the opportunity? And moving into the opportunity rather than focusing on the problem, the challenge, the negative. And so, yeah, that inflection point. And I also want to bring attention to some of the really great things happening in the chat. I had mentioned that I really loved that idea that Allison brought up of resisting urgency, especially recognizing that sense of urgency is considered one of the attitudes and behaviors of institutionalized racism. To which Allison responded, I think that urgency and the idea there can only be that the idea that there can only be a single winner, that zero-sum game, are tightly interlaced. If you don't act urgently, you can't win, because winning demands losers. And I don't think we need winners or losers. So breaking out of that zero-sum game mindset, the power over paradigm, asking how do we shift into a power with paradigm? And here we get into some discomfort, living in the uncomfortable. We are in a paradigm shift, which is by its very nature uncomfortable, transitioning from the power over paradigm to a power with paradigm, transitioning from that zero-sum game, in order for somebody to win, somebody else has to lose, to what does it look like to create a power, a positive sum game? What does it look like to have it be where we empower each other and then we can all win more? So, and then Jana saying resistance is a big part of the pain. And yeah, there's all kinds of good things going on here. So I saw, Seth, did you raise a hand?
Yeah, it made me.
Use the digital hand and keep it up. Otherwise, I can't keep track of.
Right. No, you're right. I apologize for that. It was just, I'm giggling because I can't believe I forgot about this. At our old office, when I was at Accounting Web, we had a WeWork space, so we could, we had our. If you've ever been in them, they're kind of little glass cubes, and you have your office. So I had a sign above my my computer monitor. It said "Embrace the chaos," and I actually ended up using it as a lyric in a song that I wrote. But it was always there, and it was framed. I had it framed, and a little bit before we had to move out, we found out that Accounting Web was going to remote. The pandemic had hit, and I had to get in the office to clear our stuff out. It broke. It fell off and shattered. But I remember the phrase, and I think it is applicable here. It's very difficult to feel that feeling of, yep, going and embracing the chaos. But if you've ever started anything new or moved into something different, yeah, like that's what we're talking about here, is knowing how to live in it. And it's not going to be a forever thing either. But it is a moment in time that you have to get through that that sort of maelstrom feeling, that feeling of like, I might tip over in a minute. Anyway, that's all.
Thank you. Jana.
I had a couple of thoughts. I wrote down earlier on that when we talk about changing the profession or moving toward change, I think sometimes it feels like these really big ideas. And it's almost like we want to change the accounting profession completely. And I'm of the mindset that it's really more about reframing than it is about changing. So, for example, accounting is a very hierarchical, if I don't know if I said that right, but you all know what I mean. I struggle with that word. A highly structured organization, and that is due to the nature of the work. It does not have to be the way we are as people. And that hierarchy is important from the perspective of technical acumen, lived experience. Oh, I did that before. You don't want to do that. Is it from a technical perspective and learning? So hierarchy in and of itself isn't the problem when you look at it from a technical perspective in the work that we do. Hierarchy is a problem when you think about the old boys network, or when you think about you have to be a partner before you're really smart, or only people who are on this side of the technical wall are the smart ones. And I think interrupting it and some of that is what's going to create discomfort. And it means we have to come at it. It just gets back to my opening point about being uncomfortable, in the work that I do with my clients. I spend a lot of time talking about something that I call real-time awareness, which is noticing you're being triggered. Because I can't manage a change if I don't know I'm going through something. And we all tend to be very reactive to this. And then the last thing I want to say is that one of the big things, especially in our practices and our offices with our colleagues and our clients, we talk about, you heard the words, it's okay to be not okay. But do we know how to sit with somebody in pain just quietly? And just to let them be uncomfortable. And I'm not here to solve. I'm not here to have pity, feel bad for you. I'm just here to let you know that, I'm living it. It's okay to not be okay. And I'm making it safe for you to be in my office right now and having a bad day. And you know what? It's okay. Somebody says something in a meeting, somebody is reactive to it and makes the other person feel either shut down or attacked or marginalized or dismissed. You notice it, makes you uncomfortable, they're uncomfortable. It's about being present in that moment. Because change doesn't happen in the big things. Change happens in teeny weeny little micro moments all the time. And that's what makes this really hard, is getting down to that microscopic level of change. Lots of thoughts, no specific direction.
There's so much good stuff in there, Jana. I love that you're normalizing the change process, looking at the smaller pieces to it, recognizing that the act of change is within us, and it's very small habits. And when we have a group of people doing those very small habits together, we change culture. And that is what we are doing with the Accounting Alchemy Network, and looping it back to both those just simply being present with each other. What does it look like to be present with our clients and our team members in those ways, making it so that we're allowed to show up as real, authentic, transparent, vulnerable human beings in our work relationships? This idea that, oh, it's just business, it's not personal. And the idea of professionalism, that we're supposed to hide ourselves behind this professional veneer where we're not allowed to bring our full selves to the table, not effective, not healthy. That is harmful practice. So what does it look like to change that? And what does it look like to change the institutions of the way that the accounting profession has been doing business, the things that are currently harmful? And quoting Buckminster Fuller, he says, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And I feel like that is what we are working on here in the AAN, is what does the new model look like? And how can we start to build and create and adopt the new model that people will naturally gravitate toward because it feels better? Pain pushes until vision pulls. Well, the existing model is going to be pushing people towards us, and we will be drawing them towards us with, hey, y'all, we're trying to create better over here. Allison, go for it.
Yeah, I like that. I really like the Buckminster Fuller quote, but I like the idea that it doesn't, you don't have to eat the whole elephant in one mouthful. You can go and find, okay, well, all right, I'm bothered by the extractive nature of some of the ways that we put together reports. All right, well, let's drill down. Like, how do we address that? How do we address a small part of it? How do we make it slightly better? And we don't have to invent a new model out of nothing, because also then, rightfully so, a bunch of folks are going to say, I need to learn a whole new model right now? What? I mean, yeah, tweaking is progress. Thank you, Jenna.
So I want to kind of get us back to one of our original questions. We're really, really good with this particular group of people at keeping things lofty and theoretical. Let's bring it into real life, actual change, choices that we're making. I would love to hear, where are some areas where you are inviting positive change in your life or work that has you leaning into the uncomfortable? So you personally, not in theory. And that way, anyone watching this replay or reading our article later can be hearing personal stories or ideas. And then in a bit, whether it be tied into, what are some areas, the natural next question is, what strategies do you employ for working through those uncomfortable growth periods? Because that's going to be the real juice of whatever it is we create together with this article. People are going to want to know, how do we deal with this? Jana, take it.
So one of the things I'm currently actively struggling with is this, what's the word? Withdrawal, pullback, pushback against diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And I've long time struggled with DEI generally as a terminology for this body of work. So I'm struggling with standing up for the language and the importance of the work versus moving toward talking about this in a different way without feeling like I'm selling out from the work that I do. I don't think I'm a DEI consultant, but that is the box that I am in, for lack of any other boxes. And so some of it includes talking about race, which I avoid. Talking about the broader interconnectivity of some of the things we talk about in the Accounting Alchemy Network, which I avoid. And I avoid those things because I want to invite people to slowly wade into the water. Nobody wants to jump into the 6 feet, but people will stand at the edge and let the water lap over their toes if it's safe. So my fear, and then what I'm trying to figure out, is how do I bridge all of this stuff? And so a couple of things that I'm doing. One, when I'm in meetings with clients, I'll throw out a term or I'll share a concept and I'm watching for reactivity. Or if I'm in a group where I feel like I can ask, how do you do this? I have a network of people who are consultants like me, not employees doing DEI within an organization, but people who make a living selling to organizations, where we have to be mindful of the political constructs and what other organizations are willing to do, because if they don't want to do it, they're not paying me for it. And saying, well, how are you doing it? Or how are you doing it? And admitting that I don't know how. Or, on paper, we say we do all of these wonderful things, but if I've never actually done it, that thing, I don't want to say that, because I don't want you to think I know how to do it. I've just never been paid to do it. And so how do I say it in the context of this work? So I'm trying to figure out how to get more comfortable talking about like race and systemic injustice and the environment and the connectivity to all of this with the work that I do without looking like okay, I don't know who she's talking to, but like we need to find somebody else.
I love that, Jana. Thank you so much. And I want to ask you a bit of a follow-up question, given the strategy side of it. How much has your comfort, experience level, all of those things grown just over the last year since like we started doing the Jedi program? And like what's coming to my mind is, hey, we grow stronger by doing the things that make us stronger. And yeah, we've been talking about them more. We've been doing this work. So how has that shifted for you?
Yeah. I think talking about it has helped because when you have the vernacular and the confidence to use the words, and then when other people might be reacting to them, you can then put the words into some context and not just push at them a definition of what it means. So that's been helpful. And just you lift a weight long enough and your muscles get used to lifting that weight and you move on to lifting a heavier weight. But I think the thing that's helped me the most is just throwing the idea out there and practicing different ways to message the idea. You know, I'll say something in a meeting and I get crickets. I say something in a meeting and I get curiosity. I say something in a meeting and the client's like, wow, I never really thought of that before. And none of them are bad, but it's all feedback for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm doing it in little teeny weeny steps because I'm terrified to just put myself out there. I feel like I've always been the other, and I don't mean that just in terms of race and gender. I mean that in terms of personality. Like I used to say, I have personality and I'm not afraid to use it. So I learned early in my career, it's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know, but I will find out. Right. So now I'm practicing that here. Does that answer your question?
You did. And I also want to highlight something that Seth said in the chat in response to what you were saying. He said, you create some level of comfort for the uncomfortable to happen. And I feel like that is a huge part of what we've done with the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Jedi program that we were leading. And we'll probably be doing again at some point and scheduled currently. And also what we do in general here in the AAN with our entire communication framework, the way that we set up these conversations, working to create brave spaces where we can have conversations about the uncomfortable, where it's not taboo to bring up race because we want to normalize these conversations, where it's okay to say, oops, I misgendered someone, or ouch, hey, that thing that you just said kind of stung. Can we talk about that? And make it so that it doesn't turn into a thing that a resentment that we're carrying around and harboring. And yeah, each of us is developing the skills in creating those brave spaces. I hesitate to say safe spaces because safety implies that we're still in the comfort zone. Whereas if we're creating brave spaces, we're intentionally stepping into the stretch. Who else has a story to share? Any other personal experiences of where you are stepping into your stretch zone in your own life or work and strategies that you're using? Jared, go for it.
Yeah, so just to provide some context in terms of what I do, I've kind of moved my career from accountant and financial analyst into I work for a private equity hotel investment company, and we own a portfolio of hotels. And I still very much rely on the accounting data and all that because that's our source of truth. But where I come at it now in terms of where I can see change is really pulling that information all the way through to the hotel level associates, and using it as an opportunity for engagement and collaboration and knowledge sharing. And, right. The old way is, the hotels produce all this information, all this data, it goes to corporate, and then it kind of stays within corporate and, gets fed up to our investors and our lenders. And there's no like feedback loop back to the individual employees themselves. And so, using what I can do in terms of of collecting all that accounting data and serving it back to them and say, look at the outcomes of your decisions. And this is, is this the change we want? Is this not the change we want? Is and tying, figuring out, are there better performance goals aligned with the change we want to see? And how does it get into behavior and motivation? And I mean, it just opens up this like Pandora's box based around the data. And of course, right now it's financial data. Well, is the 2.0 and 3.0 versions of this some other forms of data? Could it be environmental data? Could it be diversity data? Could it, I think, I've said this in past calls, but you're going to get the change that you want based off of the data that you're looking at. And so, and so I think it's really important for us to look at how we are what data are we generating it, and how are we presenting it and communicating it out, and who are we presenting it and communicating it out to? And I think as we start to change each of those little points, I think we can probably start to see a little bit of those little micro changes happening over time.
Fantastic. I love that. It's and looking at those micro changes in the data, like that is solid, actionable accounting style strategy that goes right in alignment with what we're talking about. And I also love what Jana put into the chat in response to what you were saying. She said it's often easier to focus on the goal and not the obstacles along the way. The long view keeps us rooted in purpose. And it's amazing how sometimes the minutia popping up can distract us if we aren't firmly rooted in our purpose. So taking that time to really establish, like, what is the stand each of us is taking? What is our purpose? What is it that we're trying to accomplish in the really big picture? Who are we and what are we doing here on this planet, in this incarnation, each of us? And those are the kinds of things that we can be talking about. How do we apply our work as accountants to the bigger picture of our lives? And I think that gets back to what Seth was saying earlier around life-work balance, that our work as accounting professionals, that's a skill. And a skill, like a hammer, can be applied as a tool in different ways. How are we applying that skill? Are we applying our skill as accountants to creating the change we want to see in the world? What is the change we want to see in the world? If we haven't asked ourselves what the changes we want to see in the world, if we're just going through the motions of being accountants to somebody else's intentions, then we're not living our own intentional lives. We're in somebody else's dream. So I want to acknowledge we've got 7 minutes before the top of the hour. What have we not yet talked about? What other questions are coming up? What other ideas that it's like, oh my gosh, this has to go in the article, or anything else that we want to make sure that we cover in the next 7 minutes?
I wanted to add just about values in general. I mean, this just kind of goes to the question of what do you want to see in the world? What change do you want to see? Right? Ultimately, what's important to you? Because I know that the areas that I am personally leaning into that are uncomfortable for me, like just being a part of these conversations, even saying yes to like playing, a role in the Accounting Alchemy Network. That's a big stretch for me. And through what I've learned by being a part of these discussions, going into the programs, I've now developed a new set of values that I didn't previously have. Part of that is like leaning way more into activism and creating regenerative business, like open-hearted communication. And none of that is comfortable. So part of what helps me is defining my values and being like, okay, if these are actually important to me, then I'm going to do the uncomfortable work to make sure that I uphold these values. That's important to me, right? So redefining values might be at the top of the list. And then like skill building really helps. And then for me, I mean, my entire career now is like doing subconscious work. So like that has tremendously helped me. And this is the work that does not make any logical sense, but works on a subconscious level to help you transform some of these patterns of thinking, feeling, and behavior that like don't feel comfortable at all, that might send you into panic zone. You can change these things on a subconscious level. And it's not a figure out type of exercise. It's you do something else. Like there's processes for it. So just wanted to throw that out there.
I love that. Thank you, Alina. And there's some amazing things going on in the chat. Jenna saying, yes, everything you said, you're articulating some ideas that I'm feeling but struggle to express, and sharing and talking about our values, and just recognizing that that level of self-awareness is an expansive state. When we get into talking about our values, our purpose on this planet, that's something that most of us were not taught to do as kids. We're taught to do what we're told. And not doing what we're told can be uncomfortable in and of itself. And really stepping into, wow, what do I want? What is the change I want to see in the world? Am I allowed to have this level of freedom? Because freedom comes with a lot of responsibility and potentially risk. And so expanding our awareness is naturally a big stretch zone, that's a huge piece of it. And I also want to acknowledge something that Jana said in the chat. This amazing profession enables us to live our lives and realize our dreams for ourselves and our lives. It's not our lives, not even a means to an end, but a big part of how we get to be who we are. It's just not who we are. And I think you're touching on something really essential there to acknowledge, Jana, that idea of I am an accountant, I am a CPA, are things that many of us have learned to identify with. Maybe someone has an accounting or CPA credential, but that doesn't make it who we are. And when we get into layers of identity, which can include race, it can include gender or sexuality, it can include spiritual beliefs or religion, all of these things that we identify with, that we say, this is who I am, that is a level of attachment to something that is going to shake us to our core when it feels threatened. And can not only put us in our stretch zone, but even put us in our panic zone, having our beliefs and our identities questioned in that way. And so creating spaces where we can question our own identities. Am I a CPA, or is that something I have? I'm not my name. I'm not my body. Those are things I have. So when we start thinking outside the box around who am I really? How am I identifying? It opens up a whole realm of new possibilities where we get to decide who we are and what we want to be. Alina.
Yeah, just really quickly, I remember when I was a staff or working in accounting firms, I would hear the term a lot, nature of the beast. Like to anything that I would say, like, oh, I really don't want to work 70 hours a week, or man, blah, blah, blah. They're like, nature of the beast. Why'd you sign up to be here if you don't want to do this? I'm like, so that just means that it's never going to change. Cool.
Yeah, not with that attitude. Allison.
There's a whole class of phrases that are effectively meant to stop people talking.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of them. And I think anytime, I mean, I heard it used recently when someone was shared, oh, they were feeling a lot of pain because they were worried about the situation in the world and some specific things that had happened in government news. And the response was, America's gonna America. And they were like, okay, so you don't want to hear from me. All right. And I think anytime that we hear that kind of sort of nature of the beast, conversation is over, it's basically somebody saying, oh, I don't want to talk about this. Well, all right, who wants to talk about it? Because I'm going to go and talk to them.
I love that. And I love Seth posted in the chat, that beast needs to be slain. So we've got a room of dragon slayers here. We're going to do this thing. And it harkens back to me to something Lynn Twist talks about in her wonderful book, The Soul of Money. She talks about the 3 toxic myths. The 3 toxic myths being that there's not enough. So we just have to fight for everything we want in this zero-sum game. That more is better. So we need to keep accumulating even if our needs are met. More is always better. And that's just the way it is. And this idea that that's just the way it is makes it so that we don't question the dominant paradigm. We say, well, little old me can't do anything about that. And by simply questioning those myths, by saying, is that true? Is what I've been telling myself true? What if it didn't have to be that way? What would different look like? How could we create that? That is what we are doing here. And Seth is saying there needs to be a new way it is. Yes, that is what we are creating. This is how change happens. And so here we are at the top of the hour. And I would love it if we could just do a really brief kind of top takeaway, aha moment, even if it's a one word, how you're feeling. I am feeling expansive. I'm loving this conversation. And I'm going to popcorn it over to Seth because you've been doing a really good job of stepping back.
It's called listening.
I love it.
I just look, I also just, for practical purposes, I'm already in my head writing. I realize I want to produce something from this. And I realized, and this is something part of our goal here is, Janah made the point before too, is when someone's also, and not that I was uncomfortable, but when somebody is, and you recognize that, it's not always, your time to try to steer it one way or another. You just sit in it and you listen and you recognize, like, there's so many, you learn so many times in your life, if you have a partnership, with anyone, a marriage or any kind of relationship that you're nurturing, you realize that the things that make that work are sometimes the uncomfortable times, and knowing how to get through it, not over it, not under it, just through it. And getting through it takes listening. So I've been listening, and writing a few things, but this is fantastic. Sometimes it just takes, this kind of, and I don't want to diminish it by saying that, well, this is ideation, but it kind of is, because we're all freely talking, we're all comfortably, or somewhat, maybe even uncomfortably, talking about this. But ultimately, we want to have something that says, okay, what is next? How do we, and to think about, change in the world, that's really big. Like I run a 6-person firm here, and I've got about 80 clients that I'm keeping happy, or trying to, and dealing with them and their lives. I don't see myself in this, I'm going to be the one that's going to do all these things. One hand you might say, well, why not? On the second hand, is saying, yeah, I get that. So what's the change you would want to see in your world? What are the things just in your community or in your life that maybe aren't working for you? And all of a sudden, you'll find sort of that ripple effect. And that's why I mentioned in my original article about this idea of not being alone. It's like whatever thought, whatever feeling that you're having of just being like, oh, this is just happening to me, I guarantee you it is not. And that there are so many hundreds, thousands out there just living very kind of a parallel-ish life to you. Not exactly the same, everyone's an individual, but having and facing some of the very similar things and questions and pains and uncomfortabilities that you are. And that's what's going to bring this together. It's that you're not other, you're not separate. That's what I think we need to start drawing a spotlight on.
Mm-hmm.
To get those uncomfortable type of conversations happening, and kind of get through that period, because again, it's not going to be uncomfortable forever. It's not It's not where it's always going to be, but you have to get through that period, of time.
Yay. Thank you,
So
Seth.
that's what I've been thinking.
Do you want to popcorn it?
Absolutely. I've not heard from Jared in a second. So over to you, buddy.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's hopeful, would be the word I'd describe it. It's and the ripple effect. I mean, it's, this conversation, what each of us then takes individually to future conversations. It's the ripple effect within the accounting alchemy network itself. And then also the ripple effect of, this article or this video and what it's going to do. So, I just think this is sort of these conversations are the starting point of just massive ripple effects that we don't even know the scale of. And, but I think that's what's needed in order to make stuff happen. So it's cool.
Thank you. Would you
I'll
like to
go to
popcorn it?
Allison next.
Thank you. I feel nourished and supported. So I'm gonna say two things. And I appreciate, yeah, we're talking a lot and ideating, if that's a thing, but talking in groups, yeah, we are taking this elsewhere, and we're also speaking some things into being. So without that communication piece, it's all just all of us staring into space, not making changes. So yeah, fantastic. Alina.
I feel like this conversation is just getting started. I was like, wait, what? We're done already? Okay, cool. I had more questions pop up in my mind, so perhaps there will be a part 2.
Post them in the chat so they don't get lost.
Well, I don't know if it's a chat. Well, maybe. Okay.
Jana, wrap us up.
I wrote down reflective. Alina, you said something that really resonated in terms of realizing my values. I don't think my values have changed. I think I'm going deeper into what they mean to me. And so really understanding how to express that it's probably more of what I was talking about before, but said in a very different way, and then align my life, every part of my life, with that. And I'm also feeling more grounded because I think everybody heard me say I was distracted earlier. I feel a little more present.
Yay. Oh, that's fantastic. I feel like that's a perfect space to wrap on. So thanks so much to each of you for being here today. Seth, I'm really excited to see what you end up writing based on this. And
No pressure.
no pressure.
No, I've learned to sort of thrive on that a bit in my life. Just the putting yourself out there and making
Yeah.
it happen.
Yeah.
So thank you for putting this together and having, me, because I'm every week I have to think about, all right, what am I going to write this week? What am I putting out there? And some things are just things that I've shared before and viewed in a different way. Other things are accomplishments. Other things are making people aware of what's going on out there. But this is a nice, natural follow-up in journalistic terms.
Nice.
Of what I put out there, which is hoping to start a conversation. Because anything I do, anything at this point in time, I don't work for anyone but me right now and the profession as a whole. That's my goal. That's why I started this, doing what I'm doing. And so, but I don't have anyone else, sort of over my head saying, oh, well, we need to produce this and this amount of time. That's just me, which is also uncomfortable at times. So thank you for giving me something else to write
Yay.
at the end of the day. But this is great. And it is a topic, in all seriousness, it is a topic that I'm particularly passionate about. And I want these conversations to continue. And by pushing them out there, content in any form gets people talking and
Yeah.
thinking. And when we have the rare occasion where we can speak in front of other accountants and other people who might, you might affect someone in a certain way. I mean, that's just, that's what it's all for. That's really what it's all about.
Exactly right. Real authentic connection. Thanks so much to each of you for showing up today. And yeah, we will keep you all informed when there's an article to peruse. And yeah,
Yeah, I'm happy to share a draft. I don't know if any, look, I
I'll make sure that you've got all the
love
details, Seth.
another set of eyes too. But yes, exactly. Of course, the AI, produced,
We'll get it all sorted.
thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have
Thanks,
a wonderful rest
everyone.
of your day.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.